to get to share some of my work and stories with you. And this is a discussion, so if you think of something you want to ask or comment on, it's fine to just chime in as I'm going through the slides. What we're looking at now is just a repeating slideshow of my work for the last 25 years. I've been a professional sculptor for a quarter of a century. In that time, I've made a lot of different works and been really lucky to be able to make my living at this. I recently published a collection of my works over there in the book. It's 100 of my most favorite pieces from the last 25 years. So feel free to put good ones on the stand. If you're interested in collecting the book, it's available for purchase. And so what I thought I'd do is look at a few of the works over the last about 18 months and just tell some stories about the process and the thinking behind those things, and a little bit about what I do. So I'm going to stop this, and what I want to begin with is giving you a quick tour of my studio. I work in a studio space in West Eugene that is called the Oblivion Factory. My wife Renee, sitting here with me, also a sculptor, also works out of that studio. And it's where I spend pretty much 7 days a week. So let's start by taking a little quick tour of this. This is a video I made about a year ago. So the projects that are in the space are from a year ago, but there are also things that we'll look at in the slideshow discussion tonight. And this was taken on my phone, so I apologize for when the camera's panning, it's a little skippy and disorienting, but the rest of it.
Hi, I'm Jud Turner. I'm here in West Eugene at my sculpture studio, the Oblivion Factory. Thought I'd take you on a little tour. These are my studio pigs. They like this. We work here in a 2,000 square foot warehouse. Little garden and pig area here on the side. I'll take you inside. We got several large projects going on in addition to gathering scrap material for future projects. I'm gathering a lot of chrome for something I can show you in a second. Here is my nearly completed Phoenix, the Phoenix rising called Veribus, which is Latin for strength. And this is made out of parts that were salvaged from the fires in the Mackenzie River area. And it'll be installed right in the middle of the city of Blue River at the end of this month. And so it's going to be taken apart and transported and put on a concrete pad there. At the heart of the Phoenix is a vessel of water from the Mackenzie River, the heart of the community. About 12, 14 feet tall. And the workspace is filled with a variety of tools, older work, and materials that I may or may not use. This is my primary tool, a small MIG welder, so a wire-driven arc welder. I also use a lot of oxyacetylene cutting, some other types of welders over here. And the chrome I've been gathering this is the beginning structure of a large horse that'll be charging on 2 back feet there for a new casino development called the Flying Lark, which is being built in Grants Pass. And so it'll be installed as part of their art walk. That's just in the beginning process of building the substructure. Something a little closer to completion is this nearly 10-foot tall Statue of Liberty replica that'll be installed at a library in Yuma, Arizona at the beginning of September. And so the Statue of Liberty replica has, the surface will be featuring a lot of found objects and parts that could be tools and things used to build America. Hand tools, farming tools, a few rifle and gun implements. And the torch will light up with an LED light that I haven't yet installed. The workbench here. A little bit of a mess, but that's pretty much how it looks all the time. At the studio, I need to be able to have all the tools to take things apart and put them together in new ways to make my found object sculpture. So a lot of metal cutting and metal joining technologies. This is a finished piece out of more raw found object. It's a pronghorn antelope that has been sold to somebody who lives in Seattle. So she'll come and pick it up sometime later this summer. So it's a crowded space, but it's fairly versatile. Most of the things are on wheels and can be moved around as needed. Good ventilation is key. A ladder to be able to get up and work high. A fume sucker. This is a ventilation machine back here, which particularly helps when I'm welding chrome. Chrome that's being welded puts off poisonous fumes. So it's really important to use a fume sucker and keep those away from the artist. Thanks for stopping by.
Poster from that show we were speaking of the review.
Right, merging.
Can you explain the things?
Let's see, we never had that kittens, and so we have 4 rabbits, 2 pigs, there's now 2 cats at the house, and there's 2 feral cats at the studio.
So they're your kids.
Yeah, basically, the pigs come with me every day, they live at home with us, but our house is quite close to the studios. The pigs ride in the back of the little cat part of the truck, and
Yeah, they seem really close to you, that's why.
oh, yeah, they're good. Right, yeah, I didn't want a dog. The dog was gonna need too much of my time and attention. Pigs are kind of their own thing. They're very, very smart, sort of manipulative. But it's a really lucky space because there's that yard garden space right next to my unit. And my landlords are super chill about me having kids and just think it's fine. So they keep me company, and there's, I work alone pretty much 7 days a week, and so there's definite downtimes of frustration and tedium or sort of losing it. So it's helpful to go just stick with the pigs, get on pig level for a minute, and kind of reset. So that's what the pigs are about.
Can you tell me about that vacuum?
Yeah, so that is when Renee and I met, I was starting to weld chrome a lot, and I was welding it and holding my breath while I do it. And you can kind of get away with that, but yeah, it's best to have a fume exhaust and filtering system. So the vacuum, is quite maneuverable. You put it right everywhere and then turn it on, and it's pulling out the smoke and then filtering it and re-putting it back into the air.
It looks pretty big.
It is.
Is it mobile?
Yeah, it's on wheels. Everything in there is on wheels so that I can shift it around as I need. So this is a photo. I love this photo. It was taken by an artist friend of ours named Tracy Sider. And Tracy comes up with these elaborate backstories and then stages them using human volunteers. And so she had this idea about this mad bird scientist warrior named Dr. James, and asked me to play dress up in my studio. I was like, yeah, sure. I'm gonna get these really cool pictures out of this technology.
Yeah.
And what?
Her work was displayed here.
That's right, her work has been displayed here, yeah, she's a really amazing artist in town, and does almost no Photoshop, it's all just stuff that she has staged and created. So this was an outtake that I wanted with the big flame, and then this is the scene that she wanted of the Dr. James repairing one of his wings after he's come back from battle. And what's funny is that the wings are made out of paper that's been painted silver, so they look all metal, but they're just paper. And so she brought all these sparks and they kept catching fire. And so they brought a smoke machine, and it was totally unnecessary because the wings kept catching fire, and we take 2 pictures and then put the fire out.
That's pretty sweet though, like the dimension
Yeah, they were large and it was uncomfortable to wear, but you know, she knows what she's doing. And it resulted in a beautiful product. So this is Renee. I owe big gratitude to Renee as my partner in life and in art. And I just wanted to acknowledge that a lot of the work that I've done, you know, I have great support and love in my life, and that really helps to create the best artwork I possibly am able to make. And we're very lucky. The other piece that's happened in the last couple of years is I got sober, and I include that because it has affected my art. I've been sober now just over 2 years, and have and it's in part with Renee's influence and partnership. He's also on this path with me, and we practice a program called Refuge Recovery, which uses mindfulness and Buddhist techniques to approach recovery. And it's a program a lot of people haven't heard of. There is a meeting here at Oblivion every Thursday at 5:30 in the basement. That is a Refuge Recovery meeting. So if that's something of interest to you or anybody you're close to, there's cards for Refuge there on the table, and you can ask me or Eli about details of that. But it's really helped me be a better human and a nicer community member, a family member, and a more focused and productive artist. So I want to acknowledge that as well. So my work I would call repurposing. My purpose in artwork is to repurpose things, and it's broader than just like recycling. I get a lot of props for, oh, the recycling guy, but I mean, I'm not as narrow as just using purely recycled things. I'm repurposing all kinds of objects, and sometimes they're recycled from bring or the dump or somebody's trash bin or whatever. But sometimes they're new. Sometimes my ultimate purpose is to make the art that I want to make and have the vision for. And if I need a bunch of similar silverware and I can't find it at Goodwill, I will go to Walmart and buy it. You know, whatever I need to do to get the vision accomplished. So it's taking mass-produced consumer items out of their functional context, using the objects in ways that the manufacturer never intended, breaking or altering them, combining many objects together to form a completely new object. And function of the objects, the original function may or may not be important in the work of art. Like, for example, in animal's muscle, I may use a spring shock absorber to show the power of that muscle. And so its original function contributes to the meaning of the art, but that's not always the case. And one of my goals is that the work needs to be immediately visually pleasing. I want it to look cool and pretty and awesome right away. I want you to just be drawn in with that. And then I want to have layers of other meaning that you may or may not, you know, perceive. If you really think about, why did I make this? What does this piece mean? Whether it's the title or the other kinds of ways to interpret it. So that if you really think hard about it, there's a reward for that process of mental investigation. So I work at a place called the Oblivion Factory. This is our studio logo. And being like, you know, almost Labor Day, I wanted to just focus on a couple of quotes that I find inspiring. This is by Tchaikovsky, the Russian composer. Inspiration is a guest that does not willingly visit the lazy. This is work. And I mean, I was talking with Will right before this, and there's a tremendous amount of labor that goes into making a work of art. And sometimes that's apparent in the details, something like Will's paintings. And sometimes you don't see that I had to make 5 horse heads before I got it right. You just see the one that's right. You don't know that I screwed up the first 4 and had to redo that. So there's a tremendous amount of labor involved, and just showing up for the work every day is really important. Contemporary sculptor that I follow, Tom Sachs, kind of a snarky comment, but it's totally true. The reward for hard work is more work. Yeah, and then finishing with my own quote, because I truly have managed to erase the line between work and fun. And I am lucky in that I'm able to do and sell projects that are personally really interesting to me, and find a market for that. And it's what keeps me engaged and wanting to show up. It's not work like many, many other jobs that people do in this culture. So I feel very blessed. Our society makes a lot of stuff, and that is a playground for an artist like me who works in repurposed materials. So there's all kinds of cool things that you can put together with a welder and find shapes that are really appealing. It's you know, where I find a lot of my materials. This is a scrap pile that's out sort of near my studio. The problem with a scrap pile like that is like sometimes the coolest looking parts that you want to see a user way up there and like safely or even allowed to climb up there. This is mostly a posed picture to show the kinds of materials that I work with. Is that your scrap pile or is it? No, this is a specific recycling. So this is this massive steel recycling yard in West Virginia that my friend works at. And again, it was a post picture from the project to sort of show recycled materials, but they are not how it would be done. I frequently have journalism students who come and ask to do their journalism assignments at my studio because it's cool to take pictures of sparks and welding, and so I end up with a lot of good kinds of work pictures. This is a recent project that we'll look at a little bit more of a 10-foot tall heron that is currently down the Willamette River, the new riverfront park that I'm proud of and doing a lot of good engagement from people. Working like this it's almost like doing a 3D puzzle. It's having a structure, like a substructure that you can see where the bird has, just the basic lines. It's sort of a drawing in 3D, and then putting the surface on. It's repurposed chrome from bumpers and fenders and things like that I've cut into shapes. And I'm just sort of finding like how can I fit things in to create the anatomy of the bird. Welding chrome, you got to be careful not to burn the chrome, so it's really strategic sort of welding in places that I can cover with other pieces or that won't show too much. Yeah, so this takes us up to Blue River and in the beginning of that project. So a collector and another artist who lives in Blue River, Mickey Voorhees, commissioned me in 2020 to do a Cheshire Cat for her beautiful property in Blue River. And it was a fun project, and I delivered it to her, and she had it on this property where she's lived for 30 years. This was in the middle of summer in 2020. This was right before the holiday farm fires decimated that area, and her home of 30 years was completely destroyed. Weirdly, the cat mostly survived. The teeth are piano keys, and they're like wood that is covered with acrylic plastic, and so in the fire heat they melted, and it gives the cat this like kind of foaming at the mouth or something. Yeah, I couldn't believe that the cat survived the fire because there was so much devastation everywhere. So her property was really beautiful and was completely decimated. This is the city of Blue River, probably 2-3 months after the fires. And so what happened was as they were beginning to do cleanup and salvage, they felt like they wanted to have something positive come out of it. And so their community development council and a private donor got together and raised funds and approached me and said, hey, do you want to do something for our community out of this burned scrap? We'll let you come collect it, and you can make us a sculpture for Blue River, and you can do whatever you want. And it was a great opportunity and a really heavy, emotional, with meaning opportunity. And this was one of the first big projects I did after I got sober, and it made me really grateful that I was sober, because I felt like I was able to really show up in maturity and emotional stableness to take on this project, because collecting the materials for this meant I was walking around in the devastation of people's homes and lives. I decided pretty early on I wanted to do a phoenix rising, that symbolism of the phoenix rising from the ashes, and I knew I was on the right track when I found this manhole cover that said phoenix, and I don't know why it was there or what it was doing other than telling me I was on the right path with that particular choice.
Within your piece?
No, it was too heavy, and the person whose property it was wanted to hang on to it. So I only gathered with permission of property owners and with real careful delicacy for that.
Are those railroad?
That was where this guy had a trailer, like a manufactured home right over the river edge. And so that was what were the supports. And as you walk through some of this stuff, you can't even tell what stuff was. So what room of the house you're in. And so some of the pieces were recognizable and usable, and some of them were just completely gone. This was a fascinating piece to find. Like sometimes in found object stuff, you find an object that you can't do anything to improve it, over what it already brings to the situation. This was a garden hose that had melted from the heat, and it's aluminum, so it's got this cooled aluminum at both ends. And I was really struck with the futility of this thing to spray water, and people tried to like fight the fire, use garden hoses and stuff, and it was completely, not up to the job of this. So I carefully took this out and preserved it, and it's not part of the Phoenix or anything else. It's just an object that carried a lot of weight and symbolism to me. So then I started to build the Phoenix, and one of the things that I needed to do was use new steel as the substructure of the Phoenix. Fire can weaken steel by about half of its tensile strength, and so I couldn't depend on finding structural steel and knowing that it was strong enough to hold up a large metal sculpture to put in public. So I built the substructure there in my studio. The doors of those are about 12 feet high, so that gives you a sense of the scale. And then began gathering materials. One of the things I used for the feathers was these irrigation water barrels. And there was a guy with an irrigation business who had lost, all of his equipment, and these barrels were pretty intact. And I knew that they would make good feathers that I could cut shapes out of, and there was a lot of it available. I didn't realize that water barrels for irrigation are lined with rubber. And so the first one I started to cut open just completely caught on fire, and that happened inside my shop. Dragging the flaming, black, smoking, burning rubber barrel out. And so then for the rest of them, I just did it outside and wore gas mask. But working with found objects, you often get surprises from what the object used to do in its real life.
Did you go sit with your pigs for a while?
I did talk to the pigs about that. They had very little sympathy for my problem. This is one of the eyes for the Phoenix. I love using colored glass eyes. The eyes of an animal sculpture are really crucial in depicting the liveliness and creating that sort of sense of engagement. And so these are 3-inch red glass eyes. I discovered that, the juggling community has lots of cool colored juggling balls in any color and any size that you need. So I just go on Amazon and look at juggling supplies to find eyes for projects like that. There's the eyes put in, and the project, probably about halfway done. And then I collected the water from Mackenzie to put as a vessel in the heart of the sculpture, which is right there. Welded into place and careful not to break the glass or evaporate the water. A lot of grinding. Grinding is not a fun part of this process. When you weld something, metal goes together real quick, and taking metal off is slow and loud and tedious. So there's a lot of, that's the sort of labor that is hidden within a piece that can end up looking effortless. There's a lot of that type of work here, please. And there it is, just about finished. And I made it in pieces knowing I was going to need to transport it. So the two wings were able to come off, the head comes off, these side flanges come off, and everything can fit in the back of a couple pickup trucks. Here it is loaded. Here's one of the feral studio cats, sort of taking the space on the dolly that I used. There's a dedication plaque bolted right at the base of it, just explaining the origins and what it symbolizes. Latin for strength is the name Viribus, and it was also acknowledging the people who were a part of the group who helped it happen at all. So that was a project that I really had great honor in being asked to do. There it is on site. It was installed just about a year ago, right near the anniversary of the fires. So it got a lot of press as far as just, the holiday farm fires and the efforts of the community to rebuild. And at this point, there are houses that have gone back up, and they're really beginning, to be a community again. But a lot of people have moved out and decided that they're not going to try to rebuild and move back. So it really changed the community forever. It's really touching to me to see a piece of art touch a community and have them engage with it and get pictures of them decorating it with flowers and just, really feeling like connection and power behind a piece of art that I made. Public art has a lot of potential to bring community together and create sense of place. And this is about the best version of that I've gotten to be a part of. So it was a really cool and meaningful project. Different flavor project was the Statue of Liberty. So that was commissioned by my uncle, who in his retirement has
created something called the Freedom Library, which is a libertarian think tank. And he's a good guy, and as long as we don't talk very deep into his politics, we get along just fine. And, I am a professional sculptor, and so I'll do what I get asked to do if it's not too off the wall or. So he wanted me to do the Statue of Liberty, about 10 feet tall. And what was challenging about this is that there is a real Statue of Liberty that everything I do can be compared to as far as how close could I come to getting this right. You know, the Phoenix, there's not a Phoenix you're looking at saying, is this right, is this not right? So every fold of fabric and I had a little model as a reference, but it was challenging, particularly in the face, to get it close enough to the actual Statue of Liberty to make my uncle and his donors happy. It ended up being quite a labor and not fun project. So there it is, it's done. It is got a lit torch and some of the important details. It does have symbols of things that represent the US or things that went into creating the US. There's buffalo, there's flags, there's a few guns that got decommissioned and welded on there. But the face was really challenging. I really did not enjoy doing the face or feel like it's that successful. I just got sick of it and needed to move on to other things. So it got put on that kind of a pallet and shipped to Arizona and has yet to be installed. He's gotten really hung up in getting various permissions from the city where he lives, Yuma, and it'll be installed sometime this winter, I suppose. But it's been particularly frustrating for him to have to ask permission from government for his symbol of liberty. He's very annoying. This is the beginning of the horse that was in the video. So Grants Pass had a project going in at a horse racing track that they have down there, and it was going to be called the Flying Lark. And this is another story about public art that doesn't have quite the same happy ending as the Phoenix. So this place, the Flying Lark, was to celebrate the power and mystery of horses, and it was funded by the guy who founded Dutch Brothers, Travis Forsman. Travis is a Grants Pass native, and Jud Turner, the coffee booth, has been extremely successful. Travis is a multi-billionaire from coffee and running these businesses. And so he wanted to invest money in Grants Pass and help the horse racing track sort of come back to life. And his idea was to have a restaurant, bar, and gaming area next to the racetrack to generate revenue. Horse racing tracks tend to lose money and cost. And so his concept was, because it's a historic horse racing track, I'm allowed to have certain kinds of gaming machines that the state of Oregon has said, these are not slot machines. This is not a casino. These are historic horse racing machines. I don't know anything about this. I just sort of learned through the process of the project. He felt that he had permission given to him by the state of Oregon to put in these gaming machines. And so he went forward with the business plan, and they hired, I think, 18 different artists to do horse-themed sculptures for this project. And they got pretty far down the road of building out this center. They were not calling it a casino, because in Oregon, only the native tribes are allowed to run casinos. That is written into Oregon law. So he felt that he had an exemption from that law because these were historic horse racing machines. He had been told this would be okay. So the tribes began to notice, hey, they're building something that looks a lot like a casino. This is not cool. This is violating our treaty with the state of Oregon, and we're going to protest this. And they raised a protest, and Travis kept building, and it was sort of like a game of chicken with who's gonna, give up first. The tribes in the state of Oregon saying you can't do this, or Travis saying watch me. And so he built this thing, spent $60 million on the restaurant and the bar and the entertainment venue, and he had hired people, and they were, everything was done. They had people training to do the job there. I brought my horse sculpture down there. This was the building that it was, going to be installed in front of. They had this big unveiling ceremony. This is all in early February. The day after this unveiling ceremony, the state of Oregon said, no, the tribes are right, you are breaking the casino, rules, by what you're doing. And I mean, honestly, this place did look like a casino. He was gonna have 225 of these machines. I ended up not really doing I don't know who's right here. The tribes have been taken advantage of for generations, so they don't trust that this guy's gonna do the right thing. He says he's gonna do the right thing. He had offered to give the tribes some of the profits, but nobody would actually talk, and they each went so far down this path before, finally deciding, the state stepping in and saying, no, you can't open it. Then I have to lose that in for everyone. I mean, I think there could have been, with better communication, some way of everybody coming together and having a understanding, or maybe just don't have the machines that are upsetting the tribes. You don't need to make that kind of money, you're a billionaire. But whatever, I'm just the artist who did the horse. The horse got installed and people loved it, and then 3 months later, the horse was removed. And so were the other horse sculptures and pieces of art that were part of this. So the owner of this said, fine, I can't have my machines, I'm not doing any of it. I'm not opening any of it. I'm laying off 200 people that I've hired to do this. Grand staff doesn't get these jobs, they don't get the facility, the horse racing track's gonna shut down, the whole thing is being mothballed. So it really had an unfortunate outcome for what, again, could have been a really positive thing for the community and for the art involved, because there were some really cool other pieces of art here that all got shipped to a warehouse in Portland where they sit today.
Is that how it was? It was that other thing was buried?
Yeah, it was buried in what you can see it in this picture. So they buried it too deep. They buried the back hose. And I delivered it there, and they had construction crews, and they're like, well, do you want to be here when we put it in the ground? Just, it seems pretty straightforward. I don't want to drive the grand path just to watch it put it in the ground. And then I get there, so I'm like, what'd you do? Like, so in my nice photo, I photoshopped the hooves back on so that I could at least have a decent picture of it there installed. But yes, that rack was all part of what, because it's structurally it's got all of its weight on the back two hooves. So it's a very questionable kind of, it's built super strong underneath, but it needs that bottom thing in order to be stable. And the building that it was right outside of was the bar. And so we talked at the beginning about, like, there's definitely going to be somebody who hops on the back of that horse for a selfie, and the horse can't break. And that's part of what I tried to make these things stabby, so that it would discourage you from sitting on the back of the horse. Helps with the wind looking like the horse is charging, but it also had the functional purpose of discouraging you from sitting on the back. One of the things that I really like about using the chrome, aside from just the bling, wow, shiny factor, is, and this is the kind of the conceptual stuff I was talking about in the layers of meaning. The chrome is all stuff that was on bumpers and motorcycle fenders and cars. The chrome went fast for its whole life as a bumper. Like, it whizzed down the road. And so now I've taken it out of that context and I'm holding it perfectly still for my sculpture and trying to make it look like it's going fast because the horse is running. So it's got that sort of circularity of the origin of the materials and the illusion that I'm trying to create by repurposing it. And I love it when I can find those sorts of circular meanings in the work and the materials.
Can I ask you a question about the chrome?
Yeah.
So is it chrome over steel?
Yeah, so it's weldable steel. Yeah.
That's varying degrees and grades and thicknesses of steel, and varying degrees and grades and thicknesses of chrome too.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely get some that is lower quality and flaking off, but I don't use bumpers. It's interesting, like, bumpers from the 50s and 60s were nice, thick, beefy bumpers, and then bumpers more recently are like they're thin. Yeah, I mean, they're easier to cut and bend, which is handy for my purposes, but they're a lot less of a burly thing to protect the car.
And chrome's and metal, where do we get?
Oh, this is chrome plating, so I mean, it's
Repurposed, yeah.
it's a chemical process to plate it over the steel, and I don't mess with it. It's rather toxic, and I'm able to find enough pieces. I have a scrap electric guy who goes the scrapyards and finds bumpers and brings them to my shop, you know, he'll bring me a couple a week. I give him $20 a bumper, he's happy, I'm happy. I don't have to go digging out, he cleans them up for me. So I have a ready source of the chrome bumpers. Oh, yeah, thank you. Another way that I collected the chrome was by putting out word to the Facebook community and saying, hey, I need chrome. I got an email from an old friend that I hadn't seen for a long time, who said, my dad was a motorcyclist and he died on a motorcycle about 10 years ago. And the day after he died, he got a shipment in the mail of the new chrome fender kit for the bike. And I've been sitting on this for 10 years without knowing what to do with it. So if you want it, here you go. So some really meaningful pieces of chrome in that one too. And she's a horse lover as well. And so it just had all these nice sort of connections of, and I mean, that's where the art process can become almost spiritual when these things come together in ways you couldn't have planned or contrived. It's really cool. Just side note, horses is something I've always been pointed to. Horses are anatomically complex. There's a lot of artists who do really, really good horse art, and there's a lot of hardcore horse fans who know horse anatomy really well, and you don't want to get it wrong in front of them. And I did a horse a couple of years before this. I did one for Southern Methodist University based on their logo, and I was almost done with it. And then Renee comes to the shop and she looks at it and goes, yeah, those aren't horses, those are tires. Like, I'm not around horses. I'm not, horses are quite distinctive. I'm around cats all the time. And I have made these little triangular ears that when I step back just look ridiculous. So I really appreciated somebody who can give me an honest opinion and say, yeah, those aren't horses. Those are kids. Ooh, this is the Tricera hops. This is over in Cossey, just a couple blocks away from us. It is one of their flagship beers, Tricera Hops IPA. And I connected with them a couple of years ago and said, you're building this new restaurant, the Better Living Room. I'd love to do a sculpture for in front of the restaurant. Incidentally, this sculpture was part of my path to getting sober. I was not sober at this point, and part of my payment was credit and coffee. Where I literally had a debit card, and I could walk in and get a can truck of beer and walk out. And that sort of accelerated some patterns and habits that have been going for many, many years. So, and they're a wonderful company. They're really good to work with, and they make many good non-alcoholic beverages that I enjoy now that I'm a sober person. But this was a fun sculpture to make. And it's very popular with visitors. Kids love it. The eyes of it are glass that a glass door friend of ours did, and they light up when the parking lights come on. So if you're there after dark, the eyes light up. This was made right at the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic set in, and I was excited about doing other sculptures for them, and they were excited. And one of their other beers is a Megalodon shark beer called Megalodon. Yeah, Megalodon. And so, like, as I had chrome, I was excited to do more work, and I said, okay, to the CEO, like, I'm going to do the shark next. She goes, you might want to wait on that because this COVID thing looks like it might be something. We might actually need to shut down the restaurant for a couple of weeks. And I'm like, this thing isn't gonna last. I'm just gonna do this sculpture that I really want to do. It'll be fine. So I went ahead and made the shark, and it turns out this COVID thing was a thing. They were shuttered for more than a year.
Okay, dear.
And yeah,
That shark was out of Oblivion.
it was, yeah, it was fun for the Merge Union show. So they were not able to buy the shark, and we didn't have any contract or anything. I was just excited and optimistic. And so the shark is now in Longview, Washington, in their downtown public art thing. So it has a nice home. People in Longview like it. And my clever wife noticed that this N, the Ninkasi logo, we could just call the shark Neptune. Now the N has a reason to be there that exists outside of Ninkasi. So the shark is now called Neptune and lives in another state. There he is, getting ready to go to Longview. getting lifted to be put into Longview. And I mean, I love these things together and I'm pretty sure that they're strong, but it's always scary to see a big, heavy, sharp thing getting lifted up high above people. It's just a very intense adrenaline filled moment, but there he is in Longview, living happily ever after. There's me being very relieved that it lowered into place and everything worked and I could drive away. This is a bench that's in Forest Grove, Oregon. It's a series of benches that they commissioned for public art and they wanted musical benches. So what this does is these wishbone shapes swing and can smack this bell in the middle. So you can come up to the bench and swing it back and forth and make a pretty nice bonging sound that is to make a wish on. And the wishing bench also references this sort of wishbone shape here. No. Here's the heron that I did in the spring, chrome, 10 feet tall. Here's the heron finished. The heron is, as I said, it's at the downtown. Here's getting ready to move the heron. It's just always scary to move these things, but a lot of fun once it's in a trailer to drive through town. People are just not expecting to see that, and they're driving about. They're big movements. And here's Boris being not helpful at all, just hanging out.
I would think if he was welding, you'd get full of them. Doesn't it get full?
No. I mean, it's a tiny bit right next to the well, but I'm doing a quick zap, and if it's gonna get too hot, I have a wet rag to put over it and cool it.
So you have to do
I can pretty well do quick zaps of welding. Yeah, it's really been appreciated at Riverfront Park. It was on the front page of the paper for Visual Arts Week, and that was pretty cool. And then people have sent me all kinds of nice pictures of it. So we'll move a little quicker now because our time is getting short. This is a bear skull that I made out of chrome. It's a black bear skull. Again, talking about the concepts, I like the idea that black bears keep wandering into town in the spring in Eugene. Like we have a lot of black bear sightings in residential South Eugene as they come out of hibernation because they're getting crowded out of their habitats by clear cutting and stuff. And so I wanted people to see their reflection in the symbol of mortality of the black bear and just think about our role in squeezing it out. And then here's to give you an idea of the scale of this sculpture. This thing is a little over 6 feet long. This is my friend Dante, who's like an actual bear hunter. And he came by to check it out with a bear skull and said I got the anatomy pretty well right on.
There are all locations identified
For
for final placement.
well, not permanently, but right now it's in the window in a photography studio at 1331 Willamette. So 13th and Willamette, you can see it there in the window, right across from the fire station. It's the photography studio of a woman named Athena Deline and her fiance, Stephen Weeks. This is a photo that they took there in the studio with their smoke machine, making it look mysterious and dark.
They've also done an art show.
Yeah, they've done an art show here as well. To build the skull, I needed a model to reference. So once I was done with the model, I used it as a sculpture ingredient as well, repurposing for myself. This is a chrome fish that's going to be installed in downtown Florence in October. It will be there for 2 years as part of their public art display. This is about 6 feet long, so it's a good sized fish. Also the recycled chrome and the spring showing kind of the power of the tail flap. And then this is a also quite large Dungeness crab. I really wanted to make a crab, mostly because I wanted to do the claw. And then the underside, that was fun. That gives you a sense of the scale. Big. And I'm not sure where the crab is going to go. It's got a couple of possible locations. I just need to do some follow-up work there. So we are about at your time.
We've got about 4 minutes and then we'll start doing the transition, but I'd love for people to give you questions.
Okay, for sure.
And then I'll do a little outro announcement.
Sounds perfect. Any questions, comments? I got a couple more things I can whiz through here. the power of the feminine was an art show that I was in, so I used the chrome in sort of a different way there to show the divine nature of the feminine. Then this is found object and assemblage, not chrome, not metal. I also recently acquired a 3D printer, which allowed me to start printing my own little plumbing parts, which has been great fun and allowed me to get all kinds of these versatile assemblages and really tickle another part of my creative impulses, which is to do plumbing and fossils and mechanized looking things. These are quite a bit smaller. These are all wall hanging. And then this has got a mix of 3D printing and some found objects from a chandelier and a repurposed bust of an African goddess. Another variation on that.
It's like the properties.
It does, yeah, good call, yeah. And then this is what it looks like before it's been painted. So here's the finished version that looks metallic and patinaed. And this is what it actually is made of. It's wood, and then all the black, white, and red is 3D printed plastic shapes.
That's so cool.
Yeah, both finishes are a lot of fun to play with.
Steampunk and H.R. Geiger.
Yeah, fossil fuels,
Ah,
literally fossil fuels. Yep. Here's a bigger version. This is nested in a coffee table. Yeah, so almost everything in there is printed, and the printer takes, between 8 and 12 hours, depending on how complex. So you can just set it up before you go to bed at night. You wake up, and here's some little plastic doodads you can play with.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As a painter, I can relate to that. How do you get your balance? How do you know where your weight's gonna be and how the other spaces are gonna balance it out? Do you have sketches?
No, I mean, I have a background in painting and drawing and kind of the compositional stuff, and what I have found is that drawing stuff out ahead of time for me is not helpful, and I was never particularly skilled at drawing and painting. It's part of how I wandered into sculpture. And the problems that come up in doing something in 3D aren't easily anticipated or solved on paper for me. So it's not usually part of my process, but like for big public projects, you almost always are asked to draw a conceptual thing. So I am forced back into drawing sometimes for in ways that don't really help. No, I'll just finish with what I'm about to work on. So this is a piece that is a repurposed piano part for a woman who lost her house in Blue River. The part up here was from her mom's piano, and she wanted it to be repurposed into something that looked and reminded her of a piano. So it'll have a photo, put in where the keys is. That's the River. I have been hired to do a cowfish for the Cowfish Dance Club. Crazy looking anatomy of a fish. It's going to be a lot harder than I thought. We'll see what happens there. And I am going to do another seahorse because the guy hired me to do that. And then what I'm really excited about, who recognizes this building?
Ooh, it's
This
very
one.
special.
Yes, so Eli and I talked, and I'm gonna do a sculpture, probably some dynamic wing shape that'll hang where the cross used to hang. And because this is still a building that has a spirituality and a community connection, I really want to create a piece that echoes that and hangs up where their symbol used to be. So I'm super excited about that.
Are you thinking film or no?
It's gonna be chrome, and then that blue ball on the table, which came today, is gonna be the center of it. So it's gonna reflect the community around it, show like the real gem of the state. So I'm super excited about this one. So
Jed, I can cry right now.
You
Mark-
have those.
So thank you everyone for coming and being part of.
I have a couple of final notes. First of all, we are gonna have an open mic. That'll be in a few minutes. We'll do the transition. We'll clean off the stage and we'll take care of that. We do have a tip jar that goes to Oblivion on the table. So if you want to support programming like this, feel free to contribute to the tip jar. And then if you don't want to do something for free for us, it really does help us out if you like our Facebook page or like us on Instagram. I know it sounds kind of corny, but that stuff really does help us out down the road. I also would be remiss if I didn't say that we're gonna have some really great musicians who are gonna be playing tonight. I'm really, really grateful to have joined us, even though it's an open mic. I hope some of you will stick around for it. And finally, I want to say that we've had this deep discussion series for a while. Jud has been really one of the big gems that we've been talking about this for a long time with. I'm super grateful to Jud. I would really encourage you to go to some of the shows. The work is really spectacular. And we've been privileged to have his work here at Oblivion, but we've also been really invited to have his work elsewhere in the neighborhood. Really, some works that have shined light here has gone on to have their own, so that's really great too. I would really encourage you to check out his book. And please help Jud out on this journey by getting the book. It's a really fantastic journey and a really nice documentation of an artist who has really emerged as a really hardworking and creative spirit and acclaimed artist. So again, this applause I'm going to ask for you from you in just a moment is really a small token of a very deep level of gratitude. And then Martin, would you mind just standing up just really quick? Martin will be hosting the open mic. So as soon as I get the stage turned over, which I'll do with Will and Dan if they're able to help me, we'll do the transition to the open mic. But feel free to mingle, say hi to Jud. I would encourage you to get his book and please support him at his other events. And please join me in giving a very small token of a very deep well of gratitude towards one of the great artists of our community, Jud Turner. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, I appreciate that.